BOYLEsports.
Hello and welcome to On The Wire, brought to you by BOYLEsports. We are looking forward to the Dublin Racing Festival this weekend. We have a star-studded panel alongside some very special guests. Make sure to stay around for a cracking episode. Our sponsors, BOYLEsports, are always trying to make your job as a punter easier. And if you're a new customer in Ireland with BOYLEsports, you can get up to €70 worth of free bets. If you bet €10, you are entitled to €70 worth of free bets. Terms and conditions apply. Look in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. Delighted to be joined by the regulars, Dan Overall, Gavin Lynch and Mark Boylan, to look ahead to the Dublin Racing Festival this weekend. 8 Grade 1s for us to preview. There'll be best bets at the end of the show as well, so make sure to stay tuned. But unfortunately, we have no time for pleasantries here as we're getting through all 8 Grade 1s, starting off with the Nathaniel Lacey and Partners Solicitors Novice Hurdle on Saturday. We do have the declarations for these. Dr. Steinberg, your 11-10 favourite, 7-1 bar Mark Boylan. Dr. Steinberg had a major form boost last weekend from his race at Navan. He does look awfully short here, though, at 11-10, I'd have thought.
It only took, I think, 47 seconds for the Paul Nolan horse to get a mention. That must be a new record.
Didn't even name the horse. I refrained from doing so.
We know the way you're thinking, to quote the JP family. But yeah, look at Dr. Steinberg. He makes sense as a likely one, but I think at the prices, he's just a little bit tight for me. And the one thing that lingers in my head with him as well, why was he so disappointing in Galway in his bumper this season? He got beaten at Clonmel bumper last year as well. Now, maybe he's just a considerably better horse over a trip, and you know that he does handle deeper ground too, but he just won. I think when horses do get turned over like he has a couple of times, they're on a little bit of a list for me that you could take on again. And I thought Kazansky was very solid here, stays really well, beat County Final, who might get a touch on later on in the show, potentially. Myself and Gavin like to look at him later, but it's from this standpoint, this type of race, it can turn into a stamina test. I think Tackle Tommy Woo Woo would ensure that too, with the Declan Queally horses often making it a good test in these type of races, for all that he's ridden quiet the last day. Yeah, I think just at the prices, Kazansky is a bit of value, won't fall down if Dr. Steinberg wins.
No, can see that. Gavin looks an open race with plenty of Gordons in behind Willie's horse, but Willie's horse does bring kind of the best form to the table, kind of from a hurdling perspective, but it's a tight price.
Yes, it is. I've backed him to the Bart a while ago, so I hope he goes and wins. But to back him with even money, I'm not so sure. Mark was saying that he doesn't like horse that kept beating bumpers, so therefore he's not going to be back in Old Park Star and the Supreme anyway, that's for sure. Yeah, Dr. Steinberg was really, really good in Galway. That was a decent race. He beats Frankie John, He Can't Dance, who are now rated in the high 120s really easily. That day he jumped well, and then beats the devil, your favourite horse in Navan. 2 mile 6, bad ground, no issue. Look at the question is he valued even money? He probably isn't, but it's a weak race. It's the weakest grade 1 of the weekend. You see horses there rated, like Tackle Tommy Woo Woo was an 8-1 shot. He's rated 135. So, if you run to 140 odd, you'll probably win it. If I had to pick one as an outsider, I think Jalon Dudery jumped really well the last day. I was surprised he got beat by Frankie John. He could improve. He had been off for a long time before Cork. He's had the 2 runs. Jordan game for rights. He could just run into a place at 20-1, but hopeful that Dr. Steinberg wins, but is he value? Probably not.
Yeah, interesting thoughts from Gavin. Dan, your thoughts on this race?
I'm impressed and surprised that Gavin mentioned Jalon Dudery, because I think he's the way I'm going to play this. I know he probably has it a bit to find on hurdles form, but you're looking at a bunch here that I think a lot of surprising types. Like Dr. Steinberg wouldn't have been a high-profile novice hurdler coming into this season. What he's done, he sets the standard, but talking about this race probably a month or so ago, you would have said maybe a second or third here. He'd still be a Bartlett contender. I don't think he's one you really want to back at this price. And you look at what Jalon Dudery was doing when he was in bumpers on soft ground, and I think his form in that discipline does set a fair standard. Obviously, he hasn't replicated that over hurdles just yet, but he missed a year behind Sawtooth over 2 miles. First start for a long time. I think you can upgrade that. Then at Leopardstown over Christmas on quickish ground. I think back up to 2 mile 6 on deeper ground. That's ideal for him. And from what we saw of him in bumpers, he has the ability to put in the performance that sees him competitive at this sort of level.
Moving on to the Gallen City Recovery and Recycling Services Juvenile Hurdle. That one really rolls off the tongue. The Spring Juvenile Hurdle went very much easier in that respect. Narciso Haas and Monge 2 here, Mark. They've ran against each other. Monge 2 got the better of Narciso Haas, but I think it'd be remiss of us to think that Narciso Haas is the same horse now than he possibly was at Ferriers early in the season.
I know there's a £4 swing as well. It's in favour of Monge 2 this weekend as well, on top of the 2 3/4 lengths. But I think looking back at it, its sharpness, its fitness, it's that time of the season where Willie Mullins has definitely needed a run, really promising effort in the circumstances, and the performance at Christmas, regardless of what we've seen in Britain, I think it's the standout so far in the juvenile division. Time of the race was by far the quickest, or the strongest run, I should say, of any of the 4 hurdles on the day that had some smart horses in the lineup. You know, he's favourite for the triumph for a reason. I think he'll win here. If I was looking at one that might be a bit sneaky from an each way perspective, only sorry we just have the 7 runners rather than the 8. But I thought North Shore ran a promising race. He's outside of the field here for Gavin Cromwell. Gavin won this race last year with Hello Neighbour, but useful form in France in the flat. Thought that was a nice debut. Should improve from it. Maybe they have Fred Winter in mind with another run after this, but just at a big price, he could go on that sneaks into the frame. If you do get somewhere offering you that 3 places, a little each way term there somewhere. But Narciso Haas, I'd be disappointed if he gets beat.
Yeah, I can see the confidence behind Narciso Haas, Dan. An interesting couple there near the bottom, maybe not for this race, but potentially handicaps come the season end, you know, at Cheltenham. Barbazon would be on my list, potentially for that, getting his 3rd run, depending on how he runs here. How do you feel it's going to pan out between the top 2?
Yeah, there's always a few in behind that invariably finish sort of 3rd, 4th or 5th that go on to Fred Winter radars, and there's a few in here that you'd have your eye on, as you say, maybe not today, but down the line. Obviously, I think the last time we did a show was sort of the pre-Christmas racing, and I mentioned there that I was going to back Narciso Haas for the triumph ahead of Christmas, so I was happy to see what he did. Clearly, he stepped forward a little bit, but you've got Adrienne back in 2nd there, who has finished about the same distance behind as she did when they raced against Monge 2 as well. So how much real improvement there, I think, is somewhat up to debate. And almost as a hedging bet, I'm quite happy to take a chance on Monge 2 here at the prices. Obviously, £4 better off with the weights. He kept slightly fresher, and she came with a big reputation in her own right over from France. So I don't think her level of form is necessarily a surprise. So I think at a sort of 10 to 3 mark compared to 4 to 6 Narciso Haas. I'd rather back her at the weekend, knowing I've got the comfort blanket and Narciso Haas at a good price for the triumph. And I don't think there's a massive par between them.
No, I can understand that. Gavin, your thoughts on the big juvenile hurdle?
I think that Monge 2 currently, as we record, is 3 to 1 and might drift a little bit. I'd say that's because there's only 7 runners. People can't back her each way. So you're going to get a proper price, if you know what I mean. When there's the dead 8, she might be a 5 to 2 shot. So that's just something to keep in mind. Monge 2, she wore the headgear in France. She didn't wear it in Down Royal, and she wasn't impressive at all that day. But then she put the headgear back on, or they did, in Ferry House, beating Narciso Haas. As Mark says, she's £4 better off, and she won't be just over, say, 2.5 lengths. You just get the impression that Narciso has improved tons since then. What was really interesting with Patrick Mullins, he gave an interview there a couple of months ago, and he said that, you know, they get a lot of juveniles in kind of August, September, October time from France, and it takes a horse a long time to fit into their regime down in Close Sutton. Whereas this horse, they got this horse back, I think, in something like April or May, and it means then that the horse has been able to adjust to Carlow weather, and the Carlow gallops far easier than some of the others. So I think he's going to improve and improve and improve. If he touches even money, I think they'll get bowled over. He's probably going to make the running. He sat behind Monge 2 and Fairy House. I think they'll switch. I think Mark Walsh will want to be in front of her at halfway. So for me, Narciso Haas, if he goes to even money, I'll definitely back it. I'd be maybe tempted at 4 to 5, we'll see, but I think a very good horse, and will probably rubber stamp his position at the top of the market for the triumph on Saturday.
The Goffs Irish Oracle Novice Chase is the next Grade 1 chronologically on the card. Unfortunately, not the clash we were looking for with Romeo Coolio and Kopek to board. We have Romeo Coolio versus Cargies and Down Mexico Way, stepping up from Handicap Company. Gavin, coming back to you. Difficult, you know, obviously we would have liked to have seen Kopek to board here. They haven't declared him in the end. Cargies gets the £7 from Romeo Coolio, and Romeo Coolio, I suppose, wasn't necessarily that impressive to the eye at Christmas.
Just one thing, when you go through all of Romeo Coolio's form, every race he's ever ran, soft is the worst ground he's ever run in. It's generally good to soft, yielding, that sort of ground. So that's interesting. Cargies, she'll make the running. She gets the £7. She kind of got a solo at Christmas. lovely hurling was never really put into the race, and we had a faller, unfortunately, say 5 out or whatever. But so people kind of dissed the form a little bit because she got a solo. But just to tell you that the form of the time of the race was the same time as Solness 4:11, so it was a really good time. She definitely loves softer ground. Like personally, I'd never back a horse at 4-9. So for me, it's either a small bet on Cargeese or no bet, because I think 4-9 in a novice chase is very risky. Romeo Cooley is a fantastic jumper, but I think Cargeese could get a solo, gets the £7, and she'll certainly give him a race with anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a race that would particularly enthuse Mark from a punting perspective. This, I can kind of understand that. I suppose Cargeese, you can see the argument that maybe at those prices might be worth something small. What did you make of her at Christmas time? I must say, I thought James's Gate, unfortunately the ill-fated James's Gate, would have rightly served it up to her, to be honest.
Yeah, and the vibes about James's Gate heading there, I think, had been that he was in a particularly good place. So that was very disappointing for them. I'd be in agreement. I think this race feels trappy. It feels like Romeo Coolio. If we had, a race where there was more depth to it to ensure a stronger gallop, where you're not going to get strung out and have that space where, one mistake can be so costly around here and put you on the back foot. When you are taking that short price, I think you have to factor it in mind. Do I think Romeo Coolio is by far the better horse? Yes, I do. But I just think this set of circumstances does come with some trepidation. Disappointed we don't have Kopek de Boer. Where does that leave him for an Arkle now to go there on the back of one run back in Navan Racing Festival time? It's a big gap. Would that be one of Willie Mullins' best training performances to be able to win an Arkle now with him off the back of one chase and running a significant absence? So it's a race that's probably throwing more questions than answers at declaration stage. I do think Romeo Coolio is the best, but I think we're looking at a Trainers' Championship. This is one, if Gordon Elliott is trying to keep the heat on Willie Mullins, he's going to have to win this one.
Well, that's an interesting point, Dan, because if it wasn't for the Trainers' Championship, would Romeo Coolio be here?
A good question. I think initially they'd thought that Kopek might appear and it will tell them whether they go down the Arkle route or whether they maybe go down a different path, maybe to Aintree and on to Punchestown. But now they may not have such a difficult question to answer. I guess tactically it will be interesting as to whether Cargeese is allowed to roll out in front as she did previously. But I mean, Jack will be aware of that. He won't want this to develop into a real sprint, because we know Romeo Coolio is far more effective over 2.5 miles. So I imagine he'll be keeping the pressure on Cargeese out in front. And obviously we know Romeo jumps pretty well. I'd say at 2 miles, he maybe was a bit surprised by the pace of the race last time and obviously had to dig deep to pull it out of the fire. So it's not the race we expected it to be. And I say the Kopek de Boer question now is an interesting one. Is there any chance they look at the Champion Hurdle, given how that division's panning out? And going to an Arkle after one run, maybe not ideal. The fact he's won a beginner's chase, not ideal, but that Champion Hurdle division looks wide open enough. Yeah,
that's an intriguing one. I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest. I suspect this weekend might tell us a whole pile on that. What also will be intriguing is this Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup. My goodness, Mark, I'm absolutely salivating looking at the horses running in this race. When you're seeing Stellar Story, a Grade 1 winner in his own right, down at 66-1 as the rag of the field, you're watching something pretty special there.
I think if this was the lineup for a Cheltenham Gold Cup come March, with the exception of one or two, we wouldn't be very disappointed. It's a fair race, and I think the addition of Gaelic Warrior this morning, which had been much rumblings about him in the last little while, and big run at Kempton last time. Some people thought he could have got closer again with a different run. Only beaten a short head in total. Yeah, it's absolute belter of a race. Factifile trying to bounce back too. I think Galopin Des Champs, the one thing that lingers in my head all season with him is comments early in the year about how they were going to work back from the day in March to have him absolutely peak then versus the rest of the season. I still think he can get a very high-end version of Galopin Des Champs, and there's definitely going to be improvement to come from Christmas. It puts him closer in the mix. But it's not just having to worry about maybe a fast or slow. And I know the way you're thinking, like in other years, I think there's a lot more lurkers waiting this time around. I think the fact you have Gaelic Warrior and Factifile here tells you maybe that they are leaving more tread in the tyres for Galopin to be at that peak level in March, and they can still possibly win the race with others. But I wouldn't forget about the big price I am Maximus, and I think it's interesting jockey bookings this morning to see Jack Kennedy on him. Had a big weekend last weekend on Spillane's Tower in those colours. He's back on again, and I thought it was a really eye-catching run from him at Christmas in the Savills. Caught me by surprise, but actually watching it back again, I was happy to mark it up even further. Didn't get a clear run entirely. He's a big price here, has run well last time. The one thing Gaelic Warrior I've been slightly curious about down here in the past has been just at Leopardstown. We've seen different versions of him. Maybe you can make excuses at times that he was coming here not fully sharp at times, that disappointment the day with Factifile when it was the match race of this meeting in 2024. But he's just been beaten a few times around here, and I'd factor that into my thinking somewhat with him here. This is Galopan's playground, but he is short. I just think I am Maximus. It's going to be a stampede, I feel, coming to tackle Galopan, and he might be one that picks up at a price there, 14, 16. I think it's a bit of value.
Gavin, I know you're always very conscious about kind of these horses when they're getting to a certain age, how willing and how much they're going to be able to retain that ability. Galopin Des Champs showed plenty on reappearance, but this is a deep Irish Gold Cup, the deepest that he'll have encountered.
Yes, it is. I just can't wait to watch this race live tomorrow. The crowd will just be absolutely abuzz. It'll be amazing. I normally will be against a 10-year-old, but we are talking about the best staying Irish chaser of my lifetime. I think he's the best Irish staying chaser since Arkle. He's an amazing racehorse. Before the last day, he was 7 from 7 over fences at Leopardstown. The softer the ground, the better his chance. The fact that Haughty Colour is not in it is going to be a huge help to him, because he can, I'm not saying dominate the race, but he can be up there. You know, there'll be 3 or 4 across the front going to the first. Affordale Fury got a solo the last day. Paul was happy to sit in behind. But with Galopin Des Champs, we've seen in the previous 2 John Durkins, he improves a lot for a run. I think he'll improve tons for that. The vibes were that he wasn't ready at Christmas. You know, he had missed a bit of work and stuff. So I would absolutely love to see him win. I'll have something on him, because even if your normal bet is £1 million, you have to have a fiver on him to say you backed him the day he won his 4th Irish Gold Cup. Just it'd be an amazing thing. I'd be against Affordale Fury. I'd be against Fact of File. I'd be against, I know the way you're thinking, even though I think he'll run much better than he has previously. He'd want to. I'd be against I Am Maximus, but I respect Mark's opinion. I think that Gaelic Warrior and Spindleberry, for me, are the 2 dangers. To get 6-1 Gaelic Warrior seems a big price each way. I think if Paul had his time again, I think he would have kicked on a mile out in the King George, and I think he would have won it. He also had a bit of a mishap with his whip after last as well. So people will say that he hates Leopardstown, doesn't perform well there. Well, just to say, he did win a handicap hurdle over 2 mile 1. He ran badly, fair enough, in the 2-horse race. He was never travelling a yard that day. That had nothing to do with Leopardstown. He just looked a sick horse. And his other 2 runs was when he was 3rd, I think, twice to Solness over 2 miles 1 on decent ground. That's not his cup of tea. 3 miles is his bag. You might say he's a dot better going right-handed, but he has won an Arkle on heavy ground. He has won at Aintree. So I've no major issue. I think he's a massive chance in it. He's only a couple of pounds behind Galopin officially. And the other one is Spindleberry, brilliant mare. I've backed her for the mare's chase, so I'm kind of a bit nervous seeing her running in the Irish Gold Cup, but I think she's a brilliant mare. We didn't know whether she could go left-handed until the last day. She bolted up in Doncaster in the mare's race. She's beaten the boys previously at Fairy House. She gets the £7. She's 10-1, and she's ridden by possibly the most underrated jockey anywhere, Danny Mullins. His record over the last couple of months has been amazing. So if you're having a bet, the 3 I would concentrate on is Spindleberry each way, obviously Galopin Des Champs, and maybe Gaelic Warrior each way, depending on what your normal bets are. But I'd be surprised if any outside those 3 won it, to be honest.
There's so many kind of imponderables of this race, and completely understand with Spindleberry, it does seem kind of the owner getting maybe the better of the trainer in terms of rolling that dice and seeing how good a mare they have on their hands. Dan, with Gaelic Warrior, I suppose tactics are going to be all important here. Galopin Des Champs better from the front. We've seen Gaelic Warrior go from the front. We've seen him, you know, be held up completely stone last by Patrick Mullins in the bowl. How do you think they'll ride him?
I'd say it'd be more akin to Aintree than we've seen previously. Obviously, the King George was a bit of a farcically run event, so I wouldn't read too much into that. I don't think they'll be necessarily overly keen to challenge the likes of Galopin Des Champs on the front end, and he's proven perfectly adaptable from hold-up tactics. So I imagine that's the way they'll go down. With Spindleberry, I guess it's a no-lose situation for them in some aspects. If she isn't quite up to this level, then they'll just go for the mare's chase. But if she runs a blinder, it opens up more possibilities, and credit to them for actually giving it a go. She adds a bit more depth to the race, and the race is so deep that it took me about half an hour to realise that Haiti Colours wasn't even running after a week of build-up, that he was going to mount this big challenge. They were very confident. I think they're going to be quite happy now to go to the Denman instead of what looks like an incredibly deep staying chase, maybe one of the deepest we've seen. I was actually quite prepared to back Lecky Watson at a massive price, expecting this race not to be quite as good as it is, because I think last time he raced on the worst of the ground on the inside, everything else was coming from wide. He stuck religiously to the inside last time. Obviously, surprised them as a novice chaser, kept building run to run. improved last time from a bit of a no-show in the John Durkin. He's around 50-1. I think more tactically astute riding will benefit him, but it's hard to see him winning this, but it wouldn't surprise me if he stepped up to a level where he could maybe fill one of the places.
Yeah, I can understand that at a big price. It's certainly a race where I'm sure we will see horses potentially outrun their odds and underperform. That is it for the Grade 1s on the Saturday of the Dublin Racing Festival, and we'll be back for the Sunday Grade 1s in a little bit. But before then, I was lucky enough to catch up with BOYLEsports ambassador Robbie Power about his thoughts and his reflections on the Dublin Racing Festival. Delighted to be joined by BOYLEsports ambassador Robbie Power, looking ahead to the Dublin Racing Festival. Robbie, very interesting time of the year, and the Dublin Racing Festival, one of the great weekends of the Irish racing calendar.
Oh, it's a fantastic 2 days racing, 8 Grade 1s. And so much to look forward to, and especially this year. We've had torrential rain over the last few days. Leopardstown have been doing a fantastic job to try and keep the water off the track best they can. It's Thursday morning, it's lashing rain again, so I think they're going to be at that again over the next couple of days. And fair play to everyone concerned for making that effort to try and get it going ahead. But I think this year's Dublin Racing Festival especially, there's loads of questions to be answered, and I'm really looking forward to the 2 days.
Yeah, and you'll have great kind of memories of riding at Leopardstown, and especially riding the chase track in more recent years. An awful lot made about the drainage, how quick it can get. What sort of ground, I suppose, are you expecting the chase track to be potentially by the time it comes to the race meeting on Saturday?
I'd say with the rain we've had, it's definitely going to be soft ground on the chase track. If not a little bit worse, it'll be the softest ground we've had at the Dublin Racing Festival since it started. So it'll be something different. But even when we have a dry spell, Leopardstown do a fantastic job watering the chase track and making sure it's safe ground. So this year, God is taking care of the water, and so that's out of our hands. But it's going to be proper soft ground no matter what, and the hurdle track will be very testing, I'd say.
Yeah, and just before even the Dublin Racing Festival became what it is now, I have vivid memories back in 2017 of watching yourself win the Irish Gold Cup on a similarly mucky day on Sizing John. That must have been a great thrill, and obviously to back it up in March, a month later, what must have been kind of the full McCoy.
Yeah, it was. That's to win the Irish Gold Cup was fantastic on Sizing John. It was his first try over 3 miles. We were a bit concerned that morning because the rain had come, but he was a very good horse. He was definitely better on better ground, but he was very effective on soft ground as well. So that's what good horses do. They can go on all sorts of ground. But that was a great box to tick to win an Irish Gold Cup.
And looking at this year's Irish Gold Cup, 13 have stood in this morning as of entries. It looks an absolute belter of a race. We have Galopin Des Champs, Affordale Fury from the Christmas race, the likes of Gaelic Warrior, in fact, to file in there from the King George as well. I suppose, do you believe Galopin Des Champs can go and win a 4th Irish Gold Cup? It would be some feat if he did.
Yeah, I do, and all eyes will be on Galopin Des Champs, and I think the whole of Leopardstown will be wanting him to do it. I thought he ran very, very well at Christmas. For a horse having his first start of the season, he arrived there at the last and maybe took a blow and didn't quite see it out. But I think he missed his prep run this year in the John Durkin, which he hadn't done before, and he'd been beaten in his prep runs in the John Durkin in previous years. So I think he ran a very satisfactory race, and looking forward to seeing him now at the DRF. If I had a choice of any one of the horses to ride in the field, he'd be the one you'd want to ride, and I think if he comes over that last fence in front, there'll be a massive roar from the Leopardstown crowd.
And certainly will. What do you make of Affordale Fury? Obviously was kind of brought his form to a completely new level when winning the Savills over Christmas. Do you believe he can kind of step forward from that and be a proper Gold Cup challenger this season?
He needs to cut out his jumping violently to the right is not going to help him. I think ground will be a big concern for Affordale Fury as well. His better form is on better ground. And I think if the ground in Leopardstown is very soft, it'll be a big negative for Affordale Fury. Yeah, and that, especially the jumping right, you get away with it a little bit around Leopardstown. You won't get away with that in Cheltenham because you're on the turn so much more. But yeah, he needs to straighten them up. And I think we'll see an improved Galopin Des Champs. would be very confident that Galopin Des Champs will reverse the form with Aphrodite Fury.
Plenty of other really good Grade 1 action on the Saturday that we have declarations for. Interested in your thoughts on the juvenile hurdle. Narciso As and Manche 2 have kind of been the two big standard setters in this division. I know you're obviously closely connected with Rob Core. Manche 2 came with a big reputation, and she seems to be a really exciting filly.
Yeah, she is. She was very exciting. I suppose a bit disappointed in Down Royal. She raced so freely. I was actually in Gordon's the morning Jack's school there a few days before, and he'd said leave the hood off her. She raced with a hood in France, and he said she didn't need the hood. I think after jumping the first in Down Royal, he was saying, I want my hood back. But the hood back on it in Fairy House, and she was a different filly altogether. She was much more relaxed and did things the right way in Fairy House. I thought she was very impressive in Fairy House. Probably needs to build on that again. This looks a very strong race. Narciso has definitely improved as well since his last start. So yeah, it's going to be a deep race, and we'll answer a lot of questions. I think whoever wins this will definitely go favourite for the Triumph Hurdle.
The Nathaniel Lacey, the opening race on the card. We've got Dr. Steinberg for Willie Mullins, who's a short enough price, but Santos Sospir is in there for Gordon Elliott and Rob Core. Sean Bowen takes the ride. A horse that's been kind of on the improve and certainly seems to have a kind of a liking for this heavier ground, as he's shown the last twice.
Yeah, he'll have no problem with ground. He loved the ground conditions. The trip will suit me. He's still a bit babyish and backwards, but I think he'll learn a lot, and running a race like this could bring him on an awful lot mentally. He's a fine big galloping horse, nice big chaser for next season. Yeah, no, it looks again a very competitive race. Dr. Steinberg definitely deserves to be favourite. Kazansky as well of Gordon's looks another good prospect. So another race we're going to find an awful lot out of it.
No Kopek to board in the Irish Arkle, so just the three, Romeo Coolio, Cargis, and Down Mexico Way, who's, I suppose, taking a big step up in class here for Henry de Bromhead. But he was good at Gorham Park when we last saw him, and probably entitled to a step up in grade.
Yeah, he is. He won a handicap in Gorham and won impressively. The next step was to jump into graded company. So, look, only the three runners, I suppose, from a punter's point of view, it's disappointing to only have the three runners. Cargesi was very impressive in Leopardstown at Christmas. She'd take them along a good old gallop, you know. Romeo Coolio would follow away and Down Mexico Way. Disappointing, obviously, not to have no Kopek de Borg in this, and Eddie Harty's horse as well, not running. So that is a bit of a disappointment, but it's still going to be interesting to see Romeo Coolio again over this trip. And I'm not so sure it's going to be the walk in the park that everyone is expecting it to be for Romeo Coolio. You know, Cargesi is a good mare. She's getting £7 off him, and it won't be straightforward.
Now, looking ahead to Sunday's racing, which we obviously don't have the declarations for just at this time, but plenty of really exciting races there. I suppose what are you mostly looking forward to? Irish Champion Hurdle looks a fine race with Lossiemouth and Brighter Days Ahead going against each other again.
Yeah, looking forward to the Champion Hurdle, obviously, and I can't see Brighter Days Ahead reversing that form with Lossiemouth. Yes, she ran very well at Christmas, but I think Lossiemouth's always a mare that just does enough. The only way I could see Brighter Days Ahead beating her is if she does what she did to Stateman last year and gets Lossiemouth out of her comfort zone. Whether the Gigginstown team decide to change tactics or not, I don't know. But it'll be an interesting watch. I'd be on the Lossiemouth camp. I think she'll take all the beating. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Final Demand. I think he has the potential to be another Galopin Des Champs, another Gold Cup horse, and he was very, very impressive in Limerick at Christmas. Very good in Navan on his debut over fence. He just looks a natural over fences, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the Novice Chase.
Yeah, and just the one other big race on the Sunday we should discuss is the Dublin Chase. I'm very interested in your thoughts on this division as a whole. We've got Solness, who's kind of the course specialist, Marine Nationale, the champion chase winner, and Majborough, who some people still kind of want to believe is going to end up kind of bridging that gap and become a champion chase horse this season.
I think on Sunday ground conditions are going to be key, and ground conditions are all in favour of Majborough. I'll be amazed if the ground is described as soft on Sunday morning if Marine Nationale runs. I don't think he'll run. Solness is definitely more effective on better ground. His form on Leopardstown is very good, but definitely more effective on better ground. Everything is ticking the box for Majborough. Soft ground, emphasis more on stamina will help him as well. So if Majborough doesn't deliver on Sunday, he ain't going to deliver in March.
Now, how would you, from a jockey's perspective, obviously an awful lot talked about his jumping. They've kind of tried everything with him, make the running, get a lead. Like, what are we kind of looking for him to kind of brush up in that department?
He needs to be quicker on his feet and think more for himself. You can't expect the jockey to look after him. He's not a baby anymore. He's in the big boys league, and 2 mile chasers, the jockey can't be minding them everywhere. They've got to go and do it themselves. I'd let him roll along. I watched his novice chase win in Leopardstown last year. I don't think it was the plan to make the run, but he ended up going to the front. Yeah, he made 1 or 2 little mistakes, but never looked like falling. And won impressively. I on soft ground, I'd let him go back and let him roll along in front and hopefully sort himself out. He's got to learn to do it himself. He's a big boy now, so time to man up into the big boys league and go do it yourself.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see on Sunday. Last thing from you, Robbie, do you have any kind of selections or what are the horses that you're really looking forward to seeing this weekend?
Obviously, I'm looking forward to seeing Gallop in this show. I think the Gold Cup is a cracking race, and I'm hoping he can bounce back like he did and has done before. I think Leopardstown, soft ground, everything's in his favour this time. And the Juvenile hurdle on Saturday as well. I'm looking forward to seeing Mons too. She looks a nice prospect, and that's a deep race. There's plenty in it, so I think it's going to be. We'll learn plenty about her.
Well, thanks for that, Robbie, and hopefully you have a lovely weekend. And looking forward to all the racing.
Thanks a million. That cheers.
Our sponsors, BOYLEsports, are also giving out sign-up offers for our British-based customers. If you bet £10, you're entitled to £40 worth of free bets. Bet 10 to get 40. Terms and conditions apply. You can look down in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. Great to hear from Robbie Power, reminiscing about Sizing John and plenty of other Dublin Racing Festival memories. We will move on to the Sunday Grade 1s, which we don't have the full declarations for, but I think we'll have a fair gist of who's running. And starting off with the Ladbroke Novice Chase. Final Demand, long odds on here, 4-9. Kay Doughty, Western Foal, Jimmy DeSoy, and then we've got plenty of horses, the likes of Kitzbühel and Calaconte, Romeo Coolio, that are all declared to run on Saturday, whether that be at Leopardstown or Sandown. Mark, Final Demand, very, very good horse, very impressive so far as a novice chaser. I slightly have a feeling, just maybe not the most popular, that everyone just wants to tell you Final Demand's brilliant, and it's almost everyone obediently following on that we have to form this orderly queue clapping him.
He is very good, and when you see him, it's hard not to be so impressive in the flesh. But I think there's been a couple of times in his beginner's chase, I thought for a period, is his wingman going to give him a little bit of a shake-up here? And then obviously the class comes through and he puts the foot to the floor and there's no catching him. And again at Limerick at Christmas, it just didn't feel that kind of silkiness, I thought, from fence to fence that you would associate with a horse at that price. It's going to be the price he is for a Brown Advisory. But maybe that's just a little bit of him. Maybe he's going to be a little bit behind it. And then, the turbo does kick in when it matters. So I'm not really in a hurry to crib him, but I'm with you. I'm not a ninth in the crown of his head just yet as the second coming. He did get beat last year in a Turners. It's not that will be the one thing I hold against him throughout his career. I think he could be exceptional. But yeah, I'd be very, very interested to see what we learn here this weekend. As far as taking him on goes, I don't know if I have the depth of opposition to do so this weekend. The race is going to cut up as well. It's not going to be as small a field as the Arkle, but as you touched on, we've got Kitzbühel, Calaconte out and gone to Sandown. It's difficult to find an angle, I thought. Western Fold, I think he'll be interested to see with a gauge to maybe how that early season forms tallies, because he's danced a lot of big senior hurling dances. For 157, I think he's rated for a novice. Even back to his beginner's chase form with Tipperary, that's worked out extremely well. I think he'll be the one that, Gordonelli did mention, we were at the press morning last week. He hoped that he just had him ready enough after the break. So maybe there'll be improvement to come with a view to Cheltenham again. But I think he might be possibly one to fill the frame behind him. But I just found it, I want to learn about him here and know whether I can, from a Final Demand point of view, can I take him on in Cheltenham? Can I find something to try and spoil him there? I think this will tell us an awful lot.
Yeah, Gavin, what's your thoughts? It looks like, to me, it looked like a 5-runner race potentially, looking at the what's going to end up running in this. And I do agree with Mark. There's not a whole pile based on form that you'd want to be taking Final Demand on with.
Yeah, I think if there's one race for the weekend where a lot of people will be having no bet, it's probably this one. Final demand's going to be 4-11, 1-3. He's very popular. The little thing in your head is, why did he get beat in the Turners? Yeah, he was well stuffed that day, but maybe they didn't make enough use of him. His jumping is very good at Navan. As Mark said, he looked to get a race at 2 out. There was a 100-1 shot, only beaten 11 lengths at Limerick. It was good performance without being amazing. I definitely would be interested in Western Fold, but all his best form is on decent ground. He hasn't ran 92 days. It's the perfect stepping stone to the Brown Advisory. So I'd imagine, they'll mind him. I could see him finishing 3rd or 4th, run a lovely race and gear towards the Brown Advisory in March. I'd imagine Cade Doughty looks to stand out, maybe to be second. Jimmy Desai was very disappointing in Limerick, but Cade Doughty ran a cracker in Punchestown against Kitzbühel and then won well the last day against the same wingman. So the betting will be interesting to see if there's any money for that, but I'd imagine it'll be very hard to see Final Demand getting beat. He just jumps so well, and he's just a beast of a horse.
Sorry, Gavin, just jump in there. On ground, how deep do you think it's going to be come Sunday? Like, we're yielding this after the minute, which is absolutely extraordinary given where we were on Tuesday. 35 to 40 mil to come, but how soft do you think it's going to be? I don't know how deep it's going to be.
Yeah, I feel there'll be a huge discrepancy between the chase track and the hurdle track. I think we'll still be running on heavy ground on the hurdle track, but just the trace track dries out so much. It wouldn't surprise me by the Sunday that we're on yielding ground, to be honest, on the chase track.
Maybe, but I think they're due to get they had issued a statement this morning at 8:15 saying another 40 or 50 mil to come. So the water table is obviously very high. I would imagine it'll be at least soft. It has to be soft, I think, in the chase track, but you never know. Leopardstown's an amazing drainage, yeah.
It's somewhere completely different to the rest of the world, Dan, but this Final Demand race doesn't really look like a race we can massively get us stuck into from a betting perspective, is it?
No, I mean, at the minute, Final Demand somewhat reminds me of how Brave Man's Game was when he was a novice, in that he had a very high cruising speed. His main asset was his jumping. But I never got the real feeling in a battle he might be the one to find. I mean, the one time he's been in a real fight was at Cheltenham and he got beaten. You can make other reasons for that. Maybe the quick ground, the way the race developed into more of a turn of foot competition at what didn't really suit him. I would just like to see him in a battle, especially with a view to the Brown Advisory. It's just the question, is anything going to be up to that level to get him into that kind of difficulties? Probably not on this occasion, but it is just something I have in the back of my mind, that is he one that's really going to dig deep and find when the time comes? And maybe the time to oppose him will be March, when a few more will be geared up for it.
Yeah, I can understand. I'm certainly, rightly or wrongly, I'm going to be dying on the sword that the big Westerner is going to be laying it up to him in the 3-miler at Cheltenham time. We'll move on, though, as we're talking about the Dublin Racing Festival, to the Tattersalls Ireland Novice Hurdle. This looks like a more intriguing race and maybe one that we can get a look in from a betting perspective. Talk the favourite, Dan, at 2-1. This horse is an amazingly talented horse to be doing what he's doing, considering his jumping is horrendous.
Very much so. Yeah, still looks quite clumsy, still very raw. Jumping lacked all sort of fluency, and he actually jumped the last okay, just over big. Back end got a bit high and came tumbling down against Skylight Hustle. But I'm not sure really the strength of that as a Grade 1 piece of form. Obviously, Skylight Hustle, the eventual winner, they're immediately talking about going up in trip with him. Carrigmore of Spruce back in third is a fair mare, but was beaten by Full of Life before that, who probably wouldn't be towards the top table of the Henry de Bromhead team. He's actually been quite weak at the betting as well, so 11-8 out of 2-1, which I find quite interesting. King Rasco Grey looks like being the main Willie Mullins horse, but I thought he was a stayer in his bumpers, for all that he did show a bit more of a turn of foot at Limerick, and the form of that's worked out quite well. I was just really taken by what Ballyfad did over Christmas. I thought it was a really good aggressive jumping display from the front, showed more speed than perhaps I think any of us really gave him credit for, which shows you that sometimes they can look stayers in bumpers, but just putting a hurdle in front of them can make them quicker. Really good aggressive jumper. I think the form of that looks pretty solid, and the fact he's obviously acted around Leopardstown as well over hurdles as well is a big positive. So I think he has untapped potential. And I just was, really taken by his performance at Christmas.
I suppose, Gavin, though, we do have a horse with Grade 1 form in the book against quite a lot of horses that are going to have to step up from winning maiden hurdles.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah. I think the ground is going to play a crucial part in this race. As we said, the hurdle track will probably be a lot softer than the chase track. So if the ground, would we guess something like soft to heavy for the hurdle track, perhaps? If that's the case, Talk the Talk has not raced on that ground yet. So that is a little worry, and obviously his jumping's a worry. Ballyfad, when he won the last day, Gordon said that they thought he wanted soft ground, but Jack reported afterwards that he seemed to be a lot better on the good ground. So that's a little worry for him. The two I like in it is King Rascal Grey. As we know, he was getting £8 in Limerick, but he travelled. I watched the race again this morning, and I forgot how well he travelled. He jumped fine, jumped really well, travelled amazing, made a mistake at the last and still went away. The second and fourth have won since. So the form is good. And also, I'd give Blake an each way chance. Has won on the flat, on soft to heavy, and also got a race in the steward's room rightly over a mile and a half in proper heavy ground at Leopardstown. Ran a blinder in the Royal Bond. I think with a bigger feel in this, hold up for a later run. I think he's a biggish price. Let me have a look here. He is currently 16-1. I think that's very fair each way value. Will love the ground, just like King Rascal Grey will. So because the ground, I'd probably just about take on Talk the Talk and Ballyfad.
Yeah, I can understand that. And Blake has done very little wrong over hurdles thus far. Mark, as I say, I'd be very rarely willing to lay a horse. Not really the way I look at these races. I would be very happy to lay Talk the Talk here. I think you've got an awful lot going for you in horses behind them. But obviously, people will look at the Grade 1 form and say that trumps.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know how deep a Grade 1 it was. I think, without knocking it, because Skylight Hustle is a smart type, I feel has been stronger and used that race down the years. I'm really sweet on King Rascal Grey. I think he has the potential to stick his hand up and be one that shortens considerably for Cheltenham after this. As Gavin's touched on with the ground element, he's handled soft to heavy at Limerick. It is an unknown for the favourite. We go back to when this horse even was first time out in the bumper. There was plenty of chat about him at the Punchestown Festival in a sales bumper that often throws up good ones. And I thought others got first run on him on the day. He was the fastest through the final 2 furlongs, came home really well. And he got one run into himself next season. But you wonder, was it a little bit of an afterthought, having maybe missed time, try and get him back, for a run just to get him out before the end of the season. And then to do what he did at Christmas, I thought maybe it was one of the performances that went slightly under the radar compared to others. And, you're probably going to have the Willie Mullins stable selected in a Grade 1 that he tends to farm down the years. And he's 11-4. I just think that's the wrong price. I think he should be shorter than that. And, look at what Willie has done in this race in recent years. It's at least 9 of the last 10 that he's won. I just think he's probably too big a price. He'd be one of the stronger ones for me this weekend. And Shuttle Diplomacy form is obviously decent too. So, no, I'm happy to have a go at him. And Ballyfad, just on him, I liked what he did at Christmas. But if you're looking at him and viewing it that, okay, he's beat Leader Dallier 9 lengths and that's a literal taking, I'd be slow to do that. I don't think we saw the best Leader Dallier by any means in that occasion. And I don't think Ballyfad is in any way flashy at home. By the sounds of it, he's a horse that doesn't show them much. So I'd like to kind of see him proving at Grade 1 level before I roll him behind him. So I haven't guessed King Rascal Grey for me.
So we'll move to the Ladbroke Dublin Chase. Seems month on month we come back to these races. Majborough has blotted his copybook, and yet a month later everyone's backing him into favouritism. Gavin, I really can't get my head around Majborough. I vowed after Christmas that was the last time I'd back him over 2 miles. He's back into favourite for this race now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what he does, how he jumps, right-handed, left-handed, hits a fence. He's always going to go off favourites. That's just the way it is. That's the rules of the game, Andrew. You just have to get used to it.
Yeah.
But we don't have to back him, I suppose, the only thing. I have backed him for the Champion Chase a while ago. Obviously very disappointing in Cork, but he should never, ever go right-handed ever again. I don't think he should anyway. Jumped a bit better the last day. Got squeezed after the last, but, yeah, I can see what you're saying. I'm surprised. What is he, 6-4 favourite? Are we 100% sure Marie National is definitely going to run? It'll maybe depend on what the ground is like on Saturday. The better the ground, the better his chance. So if the ground is soft, or certainly soft to heavy, I'd be slightly against him. He's been beat the last 4 times to Leopardstown. He's a brilliant horse. He's a Champion Chase winner. So, Barry's talk might prove correct yet. But Solness is very hard to go against. He's a funny horse in that he jumps a little bit to the right, but he gets away with it in Leopardstown because they bring him wide to every fence, and jumping a little bit to right doesn't really matter. And also it means that he's on the better ground. So it's kind of 2 negatives make a positive, really. And he's a very solid horse. And it comes to 2 out and everything else is travelling well, travelling better. And you think, oh, he's going to get swallowed up. And it doesn't happen. So you're going to have 5 or 6 runners. You can't back him each way. He's 7-2, maybe Solness, but I probably will unlikely to have a bet in the race, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that was a probably very fair summation. Mark, we've gone from Barry Connell saying that the Clarence House was Mickey Mouse to he only has to jump round to actually we mightn't run him because the ground isn't ideal.
Yeah, we get the full spectrum of it, but you know what? I actually love that. I love the bit of engagement. It's a dry old game at times, and I have no problem with someone sticking their neck out. And when he has been proven right before with this horse in the Supreme, he told us he was a certainty. I know we're going back years, but listen, I'm happy from a journalist point of view to write that I think he's good value. And look at this point of view, the way I view Marine Nationale all last season, it's build, peak at Cheltenham. Even at this meeting last year, he's beaten a couple of lengths. He cuts the deficit with Solness by 2.5 lengths. If you look at his figures, all his racing post rate and time from rate is build. Why would you see him absolutely peaking right now? Whereas I think if you're a Solness camp, these are the days that you surely circle. Leopardstown, grade ones. This is where you're going to have your absolute peak Solness. I think ground as well. It wouldn't concern me. Marine Nationale, you have a little bit of a nagging doubt. And Majborough, I still like him for a champion chase in March. I feel the way he shaped early season and the way they even rode him at Christmas, potentially just trying to kind of manage him and negotiate him, given how he jumped to Cork. I just wonder, are they working back from March as well? Not saying it won't be D-Day, they won't want to win here. I'm sure they will. But it's just, I feel there'll be another level in him come March, whereas this feels like Solness D-Day, and he's always underestimated around here. You know, I wouldn't fancy him in a champion chase at Cheltenham, but I do fancy him here. I think he'd give him a really good rattling. 7-2, 4-1. That looks pretty fair to me.
Yeah, no, completely see it with Solness at Leopardstown. Mark still fancies Majborough for the champion chase. The men in white coats are knocking at the door. But Dan, I can understand it. Solness is just one of these horses that constantly goes off 7-2 or kind of a bigger price at these Leopardstown races. I think everyone goes and thinks there should be something better to beat him. But he's so good at this track that, you know, quite a lot of the time, nothing can get past him.
Well, that's it, yeah. And his run style is always going to be conducive to that of a horse who'll pick up big races. And he's continually done it throughout his career, particularly last season, where he really sort of came of age. I'd maybe have more ground concerns than maybe Mark would about him. I still would probably side with him if I was going to have a bet in the race. But as Mark also said, Marine Nationale, is he going to run firstly? Obviously, we don't know currently, but even so, he'll be building towards March. And Majborough, to me, is just a stayer who has been too keen to really step him up in trip thus far. But you go back to how he was as a juvenile hurdler, that horse looked like he'd be going up to 3 miles sooner rather than later. And he's still persisting at 2, I think, just due to his early exertions. So I think we'll see the best of him over a trip in time, but I really wouldn't be interested in backing him over 2 miles again. And say if I was going to have a bet, it would be Solness, but I would have that reservation slightly about the ground.
One of the other great offers from our sponsors, BOYLEsports, is best odds guaranteed, applying to all singles and multiples. You can get bog on all singles and multiples at BOYLEsports. Finally, from a Grade 1 perspective, we're looking at the Irish Champion Hurdle. Lossiemouth and brighter days ahead, both renewing rivalries from Christmas time. Anzadam, El Fabiolo, who could be a bit of a lurker back over hurdles, having beaten Glenkillen very, very impressively at Punchestown. Gavin, do you believe brighter days ahead can reverse the form from Christmas, or will Lossiemouth uphold?
I think what's very important, if you can, before a race starts, is you establish in your head where will everybody be after half a mile? Because the betting when the horses are down at the start is so different to what the betting is after a half mile, right? So if you can kind of think about that, you might be able to get an angle in some of the horse races that we watch. But the Irish Champion Hurdle, can you tell me who's going to be in front after half a mile? Because you've got brighter days ahead. You've Anzadam. Willie said after the last run, we might have to change tactics. We might have to make the running with him the next day. You've got El Fabiolo who made the running. Ballyburn likes to be up there. And Cashildale Lad definitely likes to be up there. So it's just going to be very, very interesting. I think it's going to go, they're going to go lickety-split. I think it'll be a really strong run race. And eventually, I think, especially on bad ground, because Lossiemouth is a 2.5 miler, more so than a champion hurdle horse, possibly, even though that's probably controversial. I could see her coming late. She ranges in price at the moment from 11 to 8 into 8 to 11, which is very interesting. Brighter days ahead. I think Jack will want to be in front of Lossiemouth this time. I think sitting behind her is not suitable for brighter days ahead, as we saw Christmas last year, and also as we saw previously at Punchestown against Stateman. So the tactics in this race, more than any other race for the whole weekend, are going to be really interesting. I think they'll go a mental gallop. They could finish very, very tired, but I think if Paul is very patient, if they do go that pace, could see him coming through late to win. But obviously, she's no wild price.
No, I think what you've mentioned there about kind of the setup of the race is kind of a fascinating aspect of it, Dan, because we've got like Amsterdam, for instance. I think based on reading Willie Mullins and Patrick Mullins, will either make the running or be absolutely stone last. There'll be no in-betweens.
No, exactly that. I mean, it was a strange sight to see him surge through the field the last day. I don't think necessarily it's conducive to success to let him do his own thing out in front in a long-term perspective. Like, this is still a very young horse who's going to need to learn to race. So whether they allow him just to bowl out in front here, I wouldn't be so sure. When there are other options to do that, Casual Day Lad, obviously the obvious one for the Elliott team. Will he even be able to go quick enough? He wasn't really last time. So you'd imagine there'll be others in there. And obviously, they'll all know that I think on this occasion, Jack's going to give Brighter Days Ahead, as Gavin said, a more aggressive ride than last time. He'll want to be in front of Lossiemouth. But obviously, the Mullins team will also know that, and they're not going to allow Casual Day Lad an easy time out in front and almost pass the baton over to Brighter Days Ahead, sort of at halfway, and let her kick on. That's when she's seen the best effect. So I echo pretty much exactly what Gavin said. Tactically, absolutely fascinating. As a result, it makes it extremely difficult to have a strong betting perspective, but it will be a fascinating watch.
Mark, am I wrong in thinking that there's still a potential champion hurdle horse in Amsterdam, as much if you took out the fact that he's a complete lunatic, that the ability is there?
Well, if Burdett Road and Winter Fog could fill the frame last year, I'm not going to laugh at you. Behind a golden ace, it's that type of division where anything can happen, and it's hard to get snotty about thinking someone wouldn't do it. So I do think there's a good step required, though. And the one thing I didn't love at Newcastle was just the head carriage. I didn't love that he didn't fully. I thought he could have gone through it a bit better. Potentially he needed the run, but if there's a bit of rawness you can work on, that's more than okay. I think he's unexposed in that sense, but this is going to be a race that hairs on your chest are going to be required. It's the way Gavin has described, it's going to be run as well. Cashel Day Lad will be up there surely and forcing the 2. I think he needs 2.5, and it could have a feel of kind of see the stars in Irish Champion Stakes here when you look at WP Mullins with multiple runners and a Gordon Elliott duo in there as well. But I think Lossiemouth, when she was sent on at the time she was, Brighter Days Ahead took a blow by the sounds of it. Like the line from Gordon Elliott's press morning where he said that she stood in her box for 3 weeks in November to do that and to then turn up and run as she did and get within a length of Lossiemouth. And Lossiemouth has already had a race fitness edge on her in a Morgiana. I think if they can nail the tactics right, there should be at least the length of improvement there. Now, did Lossiemouth do much in front? Possibly not. Did the race pan ideally for her? Possibly not. She's an incredible mare. I don't want to be picking too many holes in her when you've won 13 or 16 9 grade ones. Only time being out with the 2 is when you fall. Like, I don't like knocking her, but I just think Brighter Days Ahead. You saw last year at Christmas when she got her mad pace in front with the Kingsfield and the other performance she could put up. I feel that kind of figure at 2 miles, it's possible to see that from her. Lossiemouth, for all that she does have pace, the 2.5 mile performances where she's ridden patiently, I think that's where you nearly get to see the best of her. So it's fascinating. I just think at the prices, the market has copped on to Lossiemouth being 8 to 11, 15 to 8 just feels a bit too big. I think 15 to 8 Lossiemouth, that is available out there, or Brighter Days Ahead, I should say, 15 to 8 with her. I think that's too big. And just with the improvement that could be there to come, if they can nail tactics, I think there's a big chance there. Jack Kennedy, who else would you want in a situation like that? Him and Paul, it'll be one of the races of the weekend. I can't wait to see it.
Those are the Sunday Grade 1s. We'll be hearing the panel's best bets for the Dublin Racing Festival. But first of all, we will be checking in with long-term man of the show, Donn McClean, who's also going to give his best bets for the weekend.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, lads. Yeah, the Dublin Racing Festival. Looking forward to this, lads. What a weekend in store. 8 Grade 1 races, top-class bumpers, top-class handicaps as well. And yeah, look, as has been well documented, we've had lots and lots of rain over the course of the last week, and conditions are going to be testing. Maybe they won't be quite the bottomless conditions that maybe some people are anticipating, especially come the Sunday. We know that Leopardstown is such a quick draining track that if there's any kind of dry at all, then it could dry out, especially on the chase track. But look, going to be testing conditions, soft ground all over, soft to heavy as well, especially on the hurdles track. So we have to take that into account when we're looking ahead to the weekend's racing. The NAP, I think Monge too, in the Gannon City Recovery and Recycling Services Juvenile Hurdle, the Spring Juvenile Hurdle as we know it. I just thought that she was a bigger price than she should have been relative to Narciso Ha. I'm not sure that the disparity between them in the market is as it should be. I think they should be maybe a little bit closer in the betting. Look, that they met at Fairyhouse the last day, and that was Narciso Haas' first run for Willie Mullins and JP McManus's first run since back in April when he won in France. Mange 2, obviously she'd had a run. She ran at Dan Royal when I thought she did well to win. She wasn't overly impressive in winning, but she was keen through the early part of the race. She had to make a lot of her own running, and in the end, maybe if Wizard of Oz hadn't made that mistake at the second last flight, he would have got closer to her than he did. But she won well, and I think obviously most importantly, she came forward from that the last day. Gordon Elliott fitted a hood, and Jack Kennedy was able to ride her in behind, albeit off not an overly strong pace, but she showed that turn of foot, and she beat Narciso Ha on merit. I thought beat him by nearly 3 lengths. Look, and Narciso Ha did come forward from that run as was expected, and he was good in winning the Grade 2 Juveniles hurdle at Leopardstown over Christmas. But Adrienne was behind him in second place that day. She finished third behind him and Mange 2 at Fairyhouse. And I think on that line, maybe there shouldn't be that much between Mange 2 and Narciso Ha. She's a little bit better off at the weights with him. He was giving her £4 at Fairyhouse. He has to give her £7 out of the full mare's allowance on Saturday. And Gordon Elliott deliberately left her off over Christmas. He figured she'd had 3 runs over hurdles. She didn't need to run again over Christmas. So she comes into the race a fresh filly. And I can see why Narciso Ha is favourite in front of her. But I thought she should have been closer to him in the betting than she is. And I think she can give him a real race. In a race that's a really good pointer to the Triumph Hurdle as well. But I think that the races about these two, they look like they're both high-class juvenile hurdlers. And I think there's every chance that Mange 2 will be able to confirm the Fairyhouse form with Narciso Ha on slightly better terms as well. For the next best, the Ladbrokes Dublin Chase, that's going to be a fascinating race. I'm a big Marine Nationale fan. I just worry about him on the ground. I think the ground just might be a little bit softer than ideal. Different story at Cheltenham in March, Leopardstown in January with the rain that we've had. I just think that he might be vulnerable. And Magborough, like, he's got such an engine, Magborough, and it wouldn't be surprising to see him going and winning if he can just introduce some fluency into his jumping. He's favourite, and you can understand why as well. But I think Solness is an underrated horse generally. Like, he won the Grade 1 race at the Christmas Festival last season in the fog, and then came on here last year. He was put in a big enough price for this race last year, 6 or 7 to 1, and he won again. This season again, he came out, won the race at the Christmas Festival again, went around the outside, got into his rhythm from early. His jumping was really good. He just seems to love Leopardstown. Marine Nationale got to within a half a length of him, and that was after making that mistake, really bad mistake at the fence running away from the stands. He did really well to get as close to him as he did, but it was yielding ground at Christmas. The ground's going to be softer, and I just thought that Solness, given the way that he operates at Leopardstown, he's only been beaten once at Leopardstown, and I think there's every chance that he'll get into his racing rhythm again out in front, around the outside. And the ground might be a bit softer for him than ideal, but he does have form on soft ground, so I don't think that's too big a negative for Solness. And yeah, I thought that again, he's about a 7 to 2 or 130 shot. I thought that was big enough over a course and distance at which he excels. And then for an each way bet, I think Kinter Kellanese in the Leopardstown Chase, the O'Driscoll's Irish Whiskey Leopardstown Chase. I think he's a really interesting horse of Tom Gibbons. He hasn't won over fences yet, but he's only run 6 times, and he's run some big races in defeat. He was travelling really well in the Leinster National last season when he unseated at the second last fence. He was travelling like the most likely winner at that point, and he was pulled up in the Irish Grand National. That was over 3 miles and 5, and it just may be that he's not the stayer over marathon trips that maybe he's shaped like he might be. His last run was in the Paddy Power Chase, and he ran a big race there. It was his first run of the season. He came there looking like he was going to nearly win, or at least go very close against Favori de Champdou and Search for Glory. And in the end, it just maybe the lack of a recent run, or maybe the end of the 3 mile trip, that just stretched him beyond its limit. That race is working out really well already. Favori de Champdou obviously went and won the cross-country chase at Cheltenham there at the weekend off, I think, a £9 higher mark. Now is the hour. He finished 4th behind Kinter Kellanese. He was about 2 lengths behind Kinter Kellanese. Of course, he's the Thyestes Chase winner. He won it off a slightly higher mark than the mark off which he raced in the Paddy Power Chase. He's now rated £9 higher than he was at Leopardstown as well. Kinter Kellanese, he's gone up £3 to a mark of 138, and I think that's fair. I think there's every chance he'll come forward for his run in the Paddy Power Chase, and also that was his first run of the season, so you'd expect that he will progress from that. Tom Gibney has his horses in really good form, and I think this trip might be close to optimal for Kinter Calanese. 2 miles 5.5 furlongs, just down a little bit from the 3 mile trip. He travels really well through his races, and I think he could be a well handicapped horse still on a mark of 138, and I think this trip could be ideal.
Great to hear from Donn McClean about his selections for the Dublin Racing Festival. We now get the opportunity to allow the guys to talk about whatever best bets they may have, could come from any of the handicaps from the Grade 1s. Gavin Lynch, we will go to you first.
I'm going to go for 4 horses, 11-2, 5-1, 10-1 and 4-1 each way, the 4 of them. County Final, I'm sure everybody fancies that. Only an off 128. Very good run against Kazansky, who was Jack Kennedy's mount in the first race on Saturday. If you go back to Coquito Bella run, that one that day of 100 is now 123. So look, County Final is very well handicapped. Made a mistake might have won the last day after that. That was a grade 2. Next one is Western Diego, 5-1 at the Barberstown Castle handicap chase on Saturday, 2 miles 1. I was going to go for Ballysax Hank if the ground was goodish or yielding or good yielding, but I think it's going to be worse. And as a result, Western Diego won well the last day for 130, runs here for 138. Brian Hayes gets on very well with it, and I could see winning again. On Sunday, in the Leopardstown Handicap Chase, Kinter Calanese is 10-1 for Tom Gibney. Would have won the Leinster Handicap Chase of 135, only for coming down. I think it would have, second last. A very good run on first run back in the Paddy Power, finished 3rd. Has gone up £3 for that. Will like the ground, jumps really well. The winner of the Paddy Power went on to win the cross-country challenge. But anyway, Kinter Calanese at 10-1 each way is a good price. And in the very last race, the meeting, 4-1, Maximilian Lady changed stable to Willie Mullins, ran very well in Gorham Park, won second. Previously had won a bumper. I think her 4-1 each way in the Coolmore Mayor's flat race at 4.27 on Sunday, each way at 4-1 seems value too. So those 4.
Dan Overall, who do you fancy for the Dublin Racing Festival?
All in the handicaps. Agree with Gavin on County Final. I think you just have to back him that kind of price off that mark. He should have a lot more to offer. I'll also be backing Son of Anarchy, also in the JP colours, in the same race. I think it's interesting Staffordshire Knott's in there, probably to keep the weights down. I thought he was a big eye catcher last time out, and he came with a big reputation, having won his point-to-point. It's just taken a long time for him to get his act together. I think there are signs he's starting to mature a bit now, and he should still have more to offer up to 3 miles. In the 2 mile handicap hurdle, I thought Sea of Sands at 20-1 might be interesting. He was a smart German flat horse, so it's no real surprise that he seems to love heavy ground. Won at Punchestown last time out, 3rd in the Royal Bund. And I thought he shaped better than the bare result here in the Grade 1 Novice last season from off the pace. He's a hold-up horse, and that tends to suit in this kind of a race. And I think he has a bit more to offer off his current mark. And then the mare's handicap, Shia Gal for Fergal O'Brien. I think she looks like coming over. I think she's still ahead of her mark when you look at her form behind the likes of Jubilee Alpha and Bluey. A bit idle in front, so they think they didn't ride her correctly at Cheltenham last time out. She hit the front way too soon, picked up by the strong sayer in Nurse Susan close home, but that form has been franked. Only up £3 for that. The one issue is only by night in the race, who could be the fly in the ointment.
Mark Boylan, usually me and you are looking at some kind of desperate 0 to 100 when it comes to these. Unfortunately, there's none of them to preview.
Yeah, look, I'm with Gavin and Dan on County Final. Can understand the case with that. We'll be watching the market late on there. In a similar vein, in those colours, I'll be looking forward to A Dream to Share, who have resisted the temptation so far to ever back over hurdles, but I wonder, could this be the day for him on Sunday in the listed handicap hurdle? You look at the history of JP in this race in recent years, you've got horses like Off You Go winning off 9, 10. Other ones there dropped the anchor quite a low weight. Even last year, McClory, Mark Walsh getting down to do 10-2. A Dream to Share has had the benefit of 2 handicap runs now, albeit one was brought down. 124 has him at 10-2 at the moment as well. I feel like this could look like a natural target track where he's won a flat maiden, and he's also beat Factify in the Grade 2 bumper this meeting before. He's a bit risky, but 10-1, I think you've been accommodated with the price with him. Like Gavin mentioned with Ballysax Hank, I do like him on Saturday, but I just a little bit ground concerned, so I'd watch how much rain falls. But I think there's a twist in him at around 2-1 at a stiff track like this. 139 mightn't stop him just yet. And in the Mayor's handicap hurdle on Sunday, I know there's a lot of chat about only by night with her reduced mark, and I do respect that. But there's another mare that could be very well handicapped relative to her chase mark too, and that's true testimony from the Ian Donoghue yard. Won a chase at Fairy House 2 starts ago off 123, has gone up to 129. Is still only 113 over hurdles. Got a sighter here over a shorter trip than ideal at Christmas. I think that this race would look like a natural target, and I've got a lot of respect for the connections involved here as well. Just thought she could be one that pops up in a race where I think you need to stay pretty well, and that guaranteed stamina of staying 2.5 and handling it easy in the ground. I think there's pluses there with her at the prices. So there are a few for me. A Dream to Share, True Testimony, probably the standout ones. And I mentioned there as well, there's been a positive vibe, it sounds like, around Gordon Elliott's new recruit, charismatic kid in the bumper as well, the grade 2 on Saturday. He gave him a good mention at the press morning recently for all the favourite there. There's been a nice bit of chat about him too, but charismatic kid, looking forward to seeing what he can do on his first start in the Jigastown colours.
I'm going to take you on with county final with St. Lefort for Philip Fenton and Niall Moore in the 225 on Saturday. He's stepping up to 3 miles, which I do believe he needs after an eye-catching third at the Christmas beating in the big lucrative 2.5 mile handicap hurdle. And then, as Gavin suggested, in the 245 on Sunday, Kinturk Calanisi, very eye-catching third in the Paddy Power, drops back to 2 mile 5, which could well be the making of him. And interesting as well that Tom Gibney, who had maybe a slower 2025 than would be appreciated of his standards, has started 2026 well and with plenty of winners. So hopefully that means the turning of the tide, and it could be a time for Kinturk Calanisi to strike in the big handicap chase on Sunday. That completes our Dublin Racing Festival preview. Really hope you have enjoyed the last 45 minutes to an hour or so of action and plenty of special guests in there as well. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Racing TV channel down below so you don't miss out on any future On the Wires. And we'll be back with you after the Dublin Racing Festival, where all eyes will be on Shelton.
BOYLEsports.